Sophia woke before the sun, as she always did. The room was quiet except for the hum of the ceiling fan and the faint city noises drifting through the window. Her small apartment wasn't much peeling paint on the walls. A leaky faucet in the kitchen, but it was hers. She made coffee, tied her hair into a neat bun, and ironed the same navy blouse she wore every Monday. The mirror on the wall reflected a young woman with deep brown skin, tired eyes, and a steady determination. She looked at her reflection and whispered, "Another day. Just get through it." Sophia worked as an assistant in a mid-sized corporate office downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills for her rent and her younger brother's college fees. She'd been at the company for 3 years, long enough to learn that success didn't always come from hard work, but from who you pleased. And her manager, Mr. Harrison, is the kind of man who thrived on being pleased. When she first joined, he was charming, helpful, even. He praised her efficiency, said she had a good head on her shoulders. But over time, his compliments changed. His tone changed. The looks lingered too long. The conversations became personal at first. Sophia ignored it. She needed the job. She had responsibilities. But the day came when ignoring wasn't enough. That morning, stepped into the office, greeted the receptionist, and made her way to her cubicle. Harrison's office door was half open, and she could see him leaning back in his chair, smiling as he scrolled through his phone. "Sophia," he called out when he noticed her. "Come in for a second." She hesitated, then forced a polite smile and stepped inside. "Yes, sir." He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Close the door, will you?" Her stomach tightened, but she did as he asked. "I was just reviewing the quarterly reports." He began flipping a few papers on his desk. "You've done excellent work. Really, thank you." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You know, people who impress me tend to move up quickly. I can put in a word for you, if we understand each other." Sophia froze. Understand each other. He smiled. That slow, smug smile she'd come to dread. "You re-smart, Sophia. Don't make me spell it out." Her chest tightened. "Mr. Harrison, if this is about work—" He stood up, walking around the desk until he was too close. "Come on, Sophia. I've seen the way you look at me. Don't act so innocent." She took a step back, her heart pounding. "I think I should go," he smirked. "You'll regret that. People who say no to me don't last long here." She left the room shaking, holding back tears until she reached the restroom. Inside, she locked the stall and sat down, her head in her hands. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, harsh and cold. She wanted to scream, to quit, but she couldn't. Not yet. Her brother needed her. Her rent was due. And men like Harrison knew that women like her, young, struggling, black, with no connections, didn't have the luxury to walk away. That night, when she got home, her brother Malik noticed her silence. "You okay, Soph?" She forced a smile. "Just tired. Long day." He frowned. "You've been saying that for weeks." She didn't answer. She couldn't. The next day, things got worse. Harrison began leaving subtle notes on her desk. "Let's talk privately. You owe me a smile today." He'd brushed past her in the hallway, whispering things no one else could hear. And every time she tried to report it, she froze. Who would believe her? He was well-liked, powerful. She was just an assistant. But then came the day that broke her silence. She stayed late one evening, finishing paperwork while the rest of the staff left. The office lights were dim, and the city outside glowed through the glass windows. She heard footsteps behind her. "Sophia." His voice came, smooth as ever. "Still working hard?" She turned, heart pounding. "I have to finish the finance summary." He smiled. "You work too hard. You should let someone take care of you." He moved closer, placing a hand on her chair. She stood abruptly. "Please don't." He leaned in, his tone changing. "I could make you assistant manager tomorrow, you know. One yes from you and your life changes." She pushed past him, grabbing her bag. "I said no." He chuckled darkly. "Then don't blame me for what happens next." She ran out of the office, tears burning her eyes. On the bus home, she stared out the window, trembling with anger. She wasn't weak. She wasn't going to be silent anymore by the time she reached home. Something inside her had changed. The next morning, she called in sick. She sat by her laptop for hours, researching workplace harassment laws, reading stories of other women who'd been through the same thing. She found an online forum where survivors shared their experiences, and there, Victories.1 comment stood out. The strongest revenge isn't anger. It's making them face the truth where everyone can see. That night, she wrote everything down: dates, times, messages. Every comment. Every unwanted touch. Every threat. Then she opened a new folder on her computer and titled it The Truth. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. She began recording every conversation at work. She backed up emails. She documented every encounter. And all the while, she kept her composure. She smiled when needed. She stayed quiet. Harrison thought she'd given up, but in reality, she was building a case. Days turned into weeks. The pressure grew heavier, but Sophia grew colder. Stronger. She met quietly with one of the HR staff, a kind woman named Denise, who had once hinted that she knew what kind of man Harrison was. When Sophia told her what she was doing, Denise's eyes widened. "You have proof." Sophia nodded. "Almost enough." Tina's voice lowered. "If you bring it forward, they'll try to protect him. You'll need more than evidence, you'll need witnesses." Sophia hesitated. "Then I'll get them." She did. Over the next month, she began talking to other women in the office, slowly, carefully. One by one, they opened up. She wasn't the first. There were others. Women who had left quietly, who had been fired, who had lost everything because of him. Together, they began to gather proof. The more Sophia learned, the angrier she became, but it wasn't the helpless kind of anger anymore. It was controlled, focused, like a fire guided by purpose. The breaking point came one Friday afternoon when Harrison called her into his office again. "You've been avoiding me," said. "That's not smart, Sophia." She looked him dead in the eyes. "Maybe it's smarter than you think." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" She smiled faintly. "You'll find out soon." He laughed, shaking his head. "You think anyone will believe you? I run this office. You're just an assistant." But for the first time, his arrogance didn't scare her when she walked out of that room. She already knew what she was going to do that night. She sent the evidence recordings, messages, witness statements to HR, the company's legal department, and the local labor authority. She copied the company's CEO and the board of directors. By Monday morning, the storm had begun. When Sophia arrived at work Monday morning, the air felt different. The usual chatter in the lobby was quieter. The glances people gave each other were sharper, uneasy. She walked in calmly, clutching her coffee like it was armor. Her heart was racing, but her face gave nothing away. Harrison's office door was shut. That was new. He was always the first to leave it open, to show power, to remind everyone he was in charge. But today, there was a shadow behind the frosted glass, pacing Denise. The HR woman who had quietly helped Sophia caught her eye from across the hallway and gave a small nod. Sophia nodded back. The process had begun. An internal email had gone out early that morning. All employees are requested to cooperate with the HR and legal teams for an internal review. No explanation. But everyone knew something was wrong. By mid-morning, whispers filled the office like smoke. "Did you hear? Something about harassment. Harrison. No way. He's untouchable." Sophia sat at her desk, pretending to focus on her spreadsheet while her stomach churned. She wasn't scared anymore, but she was waiting for the moment everything would come out at 10:15. She saw two men in suits and Denise walking into Harrison's office. The door closed behind them. For the next hour, no one moved. Then, a shout echoed through the glass walls. Harrison's voice, sharp and angry. "You think you can accuse me? Me? This is absurd." A moment later, the legal team's door opened. Harrison stormed out, his face red, his tie loosened. He looked around the office and his eyes found Sophia. "You," he hissed. "You did this." Every head turned. The office froze. Sophia stood slowly, her voice calm. "I did what I had to." He pointed at her, trembling with rage. "You're finished here. You think they'll believe some assistant over me?" But no one spoke for him. Not one person. The silence that followed was heavier than any words. Security arrived minutes later. Harrison tried to protest, shouting that it was all lies, but the HR team escorted him out. For the first time in years, the man who ruled the office with arrogance was powerless. Sophia sat down, hands trembling beneath the desk. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just breathed. That afternoon, Denise called her into a meeting with the company's legal team. They asked questions, dozens of them, about her experiences, the messages, the timeline. Sophia answered carefully, clearly, showing every file she had documented. When they asked how long she had been gathering evidence, she said, "Since the day I realized silence helps no one." One of the lawyers, a middle-aged woman, looked at her with quiet admiration. "You were very brave to do this," Sophia nodded. "Brave or desperate. Sometimes they're the same thing." Over the next few days, the investigation widened. More women came forward. Names she barely knew, former assistants, junior staff people who had left without explanation. They told their stories. One woman had been fired after refusing his advances. Another had been promised a promotion that never came. Each account added another crack in Harrison's armor. The evidence piled up. There was no hiding it anymore. Within 2 weeks, the company suspended him permanently pending legal review. Then came the press statement. "We have terminated the employment of our former manager. Following substantiated findings of workplace misconduct, we stand firmly with our employees against harassment of any kind." Sophia read it twice, her heart steady, her hands cold. It was real. She had done it. But victory wasn't simple. In the following weeks, things grew strange. Some coworkers avoided her, unsure how to act. Others whispered behind her back. "She brought him down. She must have planned this for months. You have to be careful around her now." Even when she walked into the break room, the chatter dimmed. She wasn't invisible anymore, but visibility came with weight. Denise noticed. "They're scared of change," she told Sophia one afternoon. "It's easier for them to blame the person who spoke up than to face the system that let it happen." Sophia sighed. "I didn't do it for them. I did it for me." Still, the isolation hurt. Some nights she cried quietly, wondering if her courage had cost her belonging. But then, one day, something shifted. A young intern named Rachel Burley, 21, approached her after a meeting. Her voice trembled. "Miss Sophia, I just wanted to say thank you." Sophia looked surprised. "For what?" "For showing us it's okay to say no." Sophia smiled softly. "It's not easy." Rachel shook her head. "Maybe not, but you did it first. That means something." For the first time since everything began, Sophia felt warmth instead of fear. Maybe she hadn't lost her place. Maybe she was just creating a new one. A month later, she was called to the regional office for a meeting with the company's leadership. The CEO himself was there, an older man with kind but serious eyes. He greeted her with a handshake. "Sophia, I've read the reports. You showed remarkable courage." "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. He nodded toward the HR director. "We're not proud of what happened, but we're going to make sure it never happens again." Then he looked back at Sophia. "We'd like you to help us if you're willing. We want to start a new employee safety and equality program, and we'd like you to be part of it." She blinked. "Me, yes. We believe change should come from those who live through it. You've already proven you have the strength and clarity for it." Sophia hesitated, emotion tightening her throat. "I don't know if I'm ready." The CEO smiled. "Change doesn't wait for readiness. It starts when someone decides not to be silent." She thought of her brother, of the nights she sat awake collecting evidence, of the countless women who never got the chance to speak. Then she nodded. All right, I'll do it. In the months that followed, Sophia worked with HR and legal advisors to create a new training system for employees' anonymous reporting channels, awareness workshops, and open forums for women in the company to share their experiences. She spoke at the first session, her hands trembling as she faced a room of 50 employees. I'm not here as a victim, she said. I'm here as proof that silence doesn't protect anyone. It only protects those who hurt others. If you're scared, I understand. But don't let fear become your cage. When she finished, the room was silent. Then came the applause, genuine, heartfelt. It wasn't fame or recognition she felt then. It was freedom. That evening she walked home through the city, the sunset painting the sky gold and crimson. The streets buzzed with traffic, people rushing past. Unaware of her story, she stopped at a small cafe and sat outside sipping tea. Her phone buzzed a message from Malik. Malik, proud of you, sis. You did what most people only dream of doing. She smiled and replied, Sophia, I just did what needed to be done, as she looked out at the busy street. Her reflection in the cafe window caught her attention. For the first time in years, she saw peace in her own eyes. The scars of fear were still there, but they no longer defined her. A few weeks later, she received an official letter, her promotion to Workplace Equity Coordinator. A new title, a new beginning. Denise hugged her the day she found out. You changed everything, Sophia. Sophia smiled faintly. No, I just reminded them that we all deserve respect. They laughed softly, and Sophia felt something lift off her chest up. Weight she'd been carrying since that first day in his office. She had taken back her voice that night. She stood on her balcony, the city lights glowing below. She thought of Harrison not with hatred, but with closure. He had tried to use fear to control her, but now he was nothing more than a lesson. Justice had come not through rage, but through truth, she whispered to herself. You do wrong, it always comes back. And in that moment, Sophia finally felt free, not because she'd won, but because she'd refused to lose herself. Weeks had turned into months, and the company had changed in ways no one could have imagined. The old hush of silence that used to hang in the hallways was gone. People now spoke more openly, and whispers were replaced by honest conversations. Posters about employee safety and equality lined the walls. Anonymous suggestion boxes stood near the elevators. And in the middle of it all, Sophia walked with quiet confidence. She wasn't the same woman who once trembled in the restroom, afraid of being fired for speaking up. Now, she was the woman people turned to when they needed help, advice, or courage. Her role as Workplace Equity Coordinator had become more than just a title. It was a mission. Every morning, she arrived early, reviewing reports and emails from employees across departments. Some messages were complaints, others were thank yous. She read each one carefully. One note in particular caught her eye. I was scared to tell anyone what happened to me, but then I remembered your story. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone. Sophia sat still for a moment after reading it, her throat tight with emotion. It was strange how something born from pain could grow into hope for others. Denise knocked on her door and peeked in. You okay? Sophia smiled softly. Yeah, just thinking about how far things have come. Denise grinned. You're the reason they came this far. Sophia looked down. Maybe, but I didn't do it alone. As the weeks went on, word of her story spread beyond the company. A local journalist reached out, asking to interview her for a feature about women in the workplace who had challenged injustice. At first, Sophia hesitated. The idea of putting her name and her story in public again scared her. But after a few nights of thinking, she realized that silence had once been her prison. Now her words could be someone else's key. She agreed. The interview took place in a small cafe downtown. The journalist, a woman named Clara, was warm and understanding. She didn't ask invasive questions, just thoughtful ones. Why did you decide to come forward? She asked. Sophia stirred her tea before answering. Because I was tired of feeling powerless. Tired of pretending everything was fine while dying a little inside every day. I wanted to live without fear. Clara nodded. And now that you've gotten justice, how do you feel? Sophia smiled faintly. Free, but freedom isn't the end, it's the beginning. You still have to decide what kind of person you want to be afterward. When the article was published a week later, it went viral. People from across the city, women, men, even students wrote to her, thanking her for her courage. Messages poured in on social media. Some were stories of their own pain. Others were pledges to never stay silent again. It was overwhelming, but in a beautiful way. Sophia began to understand that her story wasn't just hers. Anymore, it belonged to everyone who had ever been afraid to speak. But not everyone saw her as a hero. Some former colleagues accused her of seeking attention, claiming she had exaggerated her experience. Online, a few anonymous accounts posted hateful comments. You ruined a good man's career. She just wanted fame. She's playing the victim card. The words stung. But Sophia had learned long ago that courage and criticism walked hand in hand. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Malik noticed her quiet mood one night while they were having dinner, still reading the comments. He asked, she sighed. I shouldn't, but it's hard not to. He reached across the table and took her hand. People always fear the truth when it comes from someone they ignored. Don't let their noise drown your purpose. She smiled at him. When did you get so wise? He grinned. When I started looking up to my big sister. She laughed softly, and the heaviness lifted. A few months later, Sophia was invited to speak at a women's leadership conference in the city. The thought terrified her, standing on a stage in front of hundreds of people. That wasn't her world. But when she stepped onto that stage, the lights bright and faces blurred before her. Something inside her steadied. She took a deep breath and began. I used to think power was about who held the title, who sat in the big office. But real power isn't about position, it's about choice. The choice to speak up when it's easier to stay quiet. The choice to do what's right even when you're scared. The audience listened in silence. Some nodded. Some wiped tears. I don't tell my story for sympathy, she continued. I tell it because I want you to know that pain doesn't define you. What you do with it does. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood up. Some reached out to hug her afterward. One woman whispered, You gave me courage to file my report tomorrow. That night, Sophia went home exhausted but fulfilled. She sat on her balcony, watching the city lights. The world felt big again like it used to when she dreamed of something beyond survival. Time passed. The company grew stronger under new leadership, more transparent, more human. Sophia became an advisor for other businesses implementing workplace protection programs. She was invited to panels, featured in documentaries, even recognized by local organizations for her advocacy. But through all the success, she stayed grounded. She still took the bus to work, still called her mother every Sunday, still stopped at the same little cafe where she had first been interviewed. One afternoon, as she sat there sipping coffee, she saw a familiar face walk in Rachel, the intern who had once thanked her. Rachel looked more confident now, her eyes bright. Miss Sophia, I got promoted. Sophia's face lit up. That's amazing, Rachel. Congratulations. Rachel sat down. I wanted to tell you in person. And also, thank you again. You probably don't remember, but the day I thanked you, I was thinking of quitting. You made me stay. Sophia smiled warmly. I'm glad you did. You're part of the change too. Rachel grinned. I guess we all are. As Rachel left, Sophia sat back, feeling a quiet peace settle over her. These small ripples of hope was her real reward. But there was one more chapter she didn't expect. Months later, she received a letter from a law firm. It was short and formal. We represent Mr. Thomas Harrison. Our client requests to meet with you privately to issue an apology and seek closure. Attendance is voluntary. Sophia stared at the letter for a long time. Her first instinct was anger. Why should she meet him? What could he possibly say? But something inside her, perhaps the part that had learned forgiveness was not weakness, told her that maybe this was the final piece she needed. She agreed. The meeting was held in a quiet room at the legal office. Harrison entered, looking older, thinner, his confidence long gone. He avoided her eyes as he sat down. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he cleared his throat. "Sophia, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to hear that from me." She looked at him, calm and steady. "You hurt a lot of people, Mr. Harrison. You used fear to control them. You don't get to erase that with one apology." He lowered his gaze. "I know. I've lost everything. My family, my career. I've had years to think about what I did." Sophia's voice softened slightly. "Then I hope you use that time to become better. Not for me, but for the next person you meet." He nodded silently, eyes glistening. "Thank you for meeting me." She stood to leave. "I didn't come for you. I came for myself to close the door, okay?" And she walked away. That night she stood again on her balcony. The city glowed and endless. She thought about how far she'd come from fear to strength, from silence to voice. From pain to power. Malik joined her, leaning on the railing beside her. "You okay?" She smiled. "Yeah, for the first time in a long time. I really am." He looked at her proudly. "You did it, Soph. You won." She shook her head gently. "No, Malik, we won. Every person who was ever afraid to speak. This victory belongs to them too." The wind carried her words softly into the night. She closed her eyes and whispered, "If you do bad to someone, it comes back to you. But if you stand for what's right, tit comes back too. In light, in peace, in freedom." And the city lights seemed to shimmer brighter, as if agreeing. Months passed after the meeting with Thomas Harrison. Life seemed calmer now, quieter, not empty, but peaceful. Sophia often found herself thinking not of the pain she endured, but of the life she had built from it. Her days were filled with purpose. The workplace programs she had designed became models for other companies, and she began working as an independent consultant, traveling to different cities to speak about ethics, equality, and courage. Each time she spoke, she told a version of her story not to reopen wounds, but to remind others that they had the power to heal too. And each time, she saw it, that spark in the eyes of someone in the crowd. Hope. That was how she measured her victories. Now, not in applause or awards, but in sparks. One evening, she returned home from a conference to find Malik waiting with takeout on the table and music playing softly. "You finally made it," he said, grinning. "How was New York?" Sophia smiled, dropping her suitcase. "Beautiful. Tiring, but beautiful. The turnout was huge. So many women came up to talk afterward. One said she reported her boss the same day after hearing me last year." Malik's eyes widened. "That's incredible." Sophia nodded slowly. "It feels like every story I share plants a seed. Maybe that's what healing really is, planting something new where pain once lived." He raised his drink. "To healing, then." She clinked her glass against his, laughing softly. "To healing." Later that night, when the city had gone still, Sophia sat at her desk scrolling through emails. One subject line caught her attention. Subject: "A thank you, you'll never forget it," was from an unfamiliar name, Emily Sanders. Curious, Sophia opened it. "Hi, Sophia, you don't know me, but I wanted to tell you that your story saved me. I was being mistreated at work by my supervisor, and I didn't think I had the strength to speak up. Then I found your article, watched your speech, and it gave me courage. I filed a report and got transferred to a safer department. I'm rebuilding my confidence now. And I wanted to thank you for showing me that justice doesn't belong to the powerful, it belongs to the brave. With gratitude, Emily." Sophia read it twice. Her heart swelled with quiet pride. She replied simply, "Dear Emily, thank you for your message. I'm proud of you for taking that step. It takes real courage to stand for yourself. Never forget that your voice matters. With strength, Sophia. She sat back, smiling faintly. Every time she thought her story had reached its end, it found a new life through someone else. A few weeks later, she was invited to a major conference in Washington this time, not as a speaker, but as a keynote guest of honor. The invitation stunned her. It had been only 2 years since she'd been just another employee in an office where fear ruled. Now, she would stand before hundreds of leaders and activists. When she arrived at the event, the grand hall buzzed with voices. Cameras flashed. Reporters murmured her name. For a moment, she felt small again, but then she remembered the girl she used to be. Scared and unseen, and her fear melted into calm. The host introduced her tonight. We honor a woman who turned injustice into impact, who proved that one voice can create a movement. The audience rose to applaud as Sophia took the stage. She spoke simply. Sincerely, 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. I had been humiliated, silenced, and made to feel powerless. But today I stand here as proof that darkness doesn't win, not when you refuse to stay quiet. Her voice trembled, but her eyes shone. Revenge doesn't always mean hurting the person who hurt you. Sometimes revenge is living free, thriving, and using your voice to make sure no one else suffers the same. My revenge was turning my pain into purpose. A hush filled the hall. Then, applause, long and unending, after the event. A journalist approached her backstage. "Miss Sophia," he said, "your speech was extraordinary. You've inspired so many people. What message would you give to those who are still afraid to speak?" Sophia thought for a moment. "Fear is natural," she said softly. "But silence feeds the very things we fear. The moment you speak, you break their power. You don't need to be fearless, you just need to be brave once." The journalist smiled. "That's beautiful. Thank you." Sophia nodded. "Thank you for listening." As time passed, Sophia continued her work. But she also learned to live for herself again. She started painting, something she hadn't done since college. Her apartment slowly filled with colors, blues of calm, reds of strength, yellows of hope. Each stroke felt like reclaiming another piece of her spirit. One day, she decided to hold a small art exhibition. Not about her story, but about healing. The paintings didn't show faces or events, only emotions. She titled the collection Resilience. The gallery opening drew a modest crowd. Denise was there, Malik too, both beaming with pride. A young woman stood before one of the paintings, swirl of black fading into light, and whispered, "It feels like coming out of darkness." Sophia smiled softly behind her. "That's exactly what it is." Months later, Sophia received a call that her company's safety and ethics model had been adopted nationwide. She was invited to join a federal committee on workplace integrity, the very change she once dreamed of. When she accepted, she thought of the girl she used to be, tired, small, unseen. And she whispered to her memory, "We made it." One evening, after another long day of work, Sophia walked through her old neighborhood. The small streets still smelled like rain and dust, just as they had years ago when she used to catch the bus to the office. She stopped near the old bus stop, where she once cried silently, wondering how she would face another day. Now she stood taller. The wind brushed against her face, warm and soft. A group of young girls passed by, laughing, holding files and office bags. One of them recognized her. "Wait, aren't you Sophia James? The woman who spoke at the Justice Summit?" Sophia smiled gently. "I suppose I am." The girl's eyes sparkled. "You're amazing. I watched your video in my class. You made me want to study law." Sophia's heart swelled. "That's wonderful. The world needs more brave voices like yours." The girl grinned. "Thank you, ma'am," and ran off with her friends. Sophia stood there for a moment, smiling to herself. It was then she realized her revenge had never been about destroying someone else. It had been about rebuilding herself piece by piece, truth by truth, until no one could ever silence her again that night. She returned home and stood on her balcony, as she often did. The city lights stretched out like stars, reflecting a life reborn. Malik called from inside. "Sophia, you coming in?" "In a minute," she said, still watching the horizon. The cool wind brushed against her cheeks. She closed her eyes and whispered to the universe. "When you do wrong to someone, it always comes back to you. But when you rise with truth, the world rises with you." A single tear fell, not of sadness, but peace. She smiled softly and surely, knowing she had turned her suffering into something eternal. Her story wasn't about pain anymore. It was about power, the kind that heals, transforms, and returns like light after a long storm. And somewhere, far away, justice echoed quietly, not in the form of punishment, but in the form of change. Sophia had won.